Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about some of the past predictions of Lindsey Williams. I don't have any faith in the guy, but I think some of the information he gets is legit from wherever he's getting it from. I think he talks to somebody, but and he says he's careful not to add anything, but I don't think he actually repeats exactly what he's been told or he interprets something wrong. I know he said eventually that the dollar, the U.S. dollar, would be dead, but it's not the same as non-existent. What that means is no longer going to be the world reserve currency. Obviously, that's true. That's going to come about. So, what does that mean for gold and other commodities? Well, it looks like you can see it right there in plain sight all the time. All the currencies are debasing. The yen, the Japanese yen, is going on like super QE right now into uncharted territories. And actually, the pullback, if we're looking at a curve of gold that went on the last couple of years, the way it went on with yen, it wouldn't look anywhere near as bad as the dollar, because the dollar strength is pretty good. But it seems like it's like each currency's kind of taking its turn and when it's going to drop. But this other central banks will intervene, and they're all dropping at the same time. It's basically like a controlled slide. Now, I don't think we're going to go into a system where it's going to be pure gold that's going to be backing up everything. No way. Probably be a mixture of commodities and also a mixture of currencies. Like, in other words, the dollar, that's why these people, this is one thing I want to really get straight here. I don't think the dollar is going to total oblivion. Like, that's one of the things that the most hardcore gold and silver bugs will say it's going to oblivion. That's why you have to have silver. Now, in my case, I'm probably going to keep a pretty good amount of silver and gold anyway, even after I figure the heights here, because I've always kept this stuff. It's something good to have, is backup to the backup to the backup to the backup. In other words, that stuff never really goes to zero. Everything else pretty much can, but that stuff really don't. And, it's like the insurance to the insurance to the insurance. That's the way I look at it. But as far as the dollar going to total oblivion, I don't think it's going to happen that way. The United States got a lot of powerful resources, natural resources, large industry. The United States really didn't de-industrialize. I know George Soros would love to see that happen, but it's not going to happen. The United States did not de-industrialize. It's like China is basically industrializing faster than the United States is increasing. We're pretty much staying on a plateau with a very, very slow growth, but we're not de-industrializing. Now, something Lindsey Williams said a while ago, he says they want to bring up the oil production in the Balkan Reserve and in the North Slope, and they're going to be pumping out oil left and right in the United States, and we're going to be the number one oil producer. He said that a while ago, and hey, it's happening. It's happening. It's the United States is going to be forecast to be the number one oil producer in the world probably by 2016 or 2017, or we're going to be. See, Russia's actually in decline right now. We're pumping up more and more. That's what's going on. But something else he said, and this really makes sense to me. This is why I think, well, we know the elite are pushing conflict in the Middle East. They're actually pushing this. But part of it is because nothing to do with religion or anything. It has to do with just wanting to get the oil prices high. That does make some sense to me, that if you have a product that's very abundant and you want to keep the price up, you want to knock out the competition, you only want to sell your stuff. In other words, if you're a store on a block and you got, let's say it's hula hoops, I'll give a dumb example, right? And you got a store down there on the side, they're selling hula hoops, and you want to knock that store out, so you're the only guy that has it, so you can charge more money for it, right? So that's really what's going on partly with the Middle East policy. It's not all over even just the Federal Reserve. There's a number of things. It's almost like anything that's out there. There's a number of things that kind of coalesce to lead up to something. You could say that with 911. Hey, 911, that the World Trade Center, that building had so much asbestos in it, it would have cost more money than the building would have freaking been cost to build to take the asbestos out of it. I mean, it's like a lot of different reasons something happens. You know, with JFK, there's a lot of different things that something happens. So, like, why stuff's going like the way it is in the Middle East? It's a lot of different things, actually. There's a lot of different things. You know, some people always concentrate on Israel, but that's one thing. And it's certainly, like Netanyahu, he's pretty radical, I know. He's more radical than most people in Israel, I know that. But common sense tells you that. But the thing is, that's not the only reason. And it's not just because the Federal Reserve is seeing that as a problem where Iran is not trading oil in dollars. They will not accept dollars. They're not even like, they're going even further. Like other countries were saying, yeah, we want to use the euro, but, like in Iraq, but Iran doesn't even want to accept dollars, period. So that's something where, the Federal Reserve and the powers in the West see that as a problem. But it's also because the oil companies themselves, a separate thing, basically, see, hey, there's a lot of problem and tension in the Middle East. The price of oil is going to go way up, and that's good for us. That's good for our bottom line. I can tell you one thing, there was construction companies around in the South here, around, during the time of Hurricane Katrina. Oh, privately, they loved that. They said, oh, it's good for business. We got to rebuild everything, and they got all this money coming in there. They were looking, they wanted contracts. That's how they think. They're too bad, man. That's the way the business is. So, looking at a little common sense 101. There's several reasons why, something probably will happen in the Middle East. But it's going to cost too much money. Well, it's difficult. It's a difficult decision. Everything they do is a risk. Everything they do is a risk. But this silver and gold looks like it. I don't want to say this too early but there's another. I said 24.5 on a silver. I was thinking around there 24 and change, because I just couldn't see 22. That just seemed too damn low. But if you look back, the last time it really reset really hard back in 2008, 9, whatever it was. It went from like the height 22 down to like 8, and 8 was the old 20. It was the old height, around the old height. So they're probably going down to maybe 22 would be it. Maybe. I see it's, but there's bears out there who say it's never going up, it's going to stay flat for years. I don't think it's just going to go right up. I'm going to say one thing here, too. I don't know why people listen to some of these other crackpots pushing these stories about the COMEX ready to default, and then, if the COMEX defaulted, silver's going to go right through the freaking roof. I know that, but I don't buy these stories because they're coming from the same sources. What amazes me is why are people listening to that stuff? I don't get that. I mean, that's like saying, well, if aliens came down from the freaking outer space, I mean, it's that wacky of a freaking theory. It's not gonna, I don't think I mean, if it ever did, fine. I mean, because I'm holding this stuff, and then I'll sell it then, because it's going to go up like a rocket ship, because anytime a COMEX defaults, and they don't have it, all of a sudden that metal just became worth a hell of a lot more. But it just makes me wonder why people even listen to that stuff. And like the other thing I was saying, where I think is a pretty much, I know there's a lot of debt in the United States and there's a lot of problems, but I don't think the dollar could be greatly diminished, but I don't think it's going away. I think the dollar is going to probably be the stuff we're going to be using in this country for a long time. It just may not be used in the world that much. It might be like, when we as Americans go someplace and, if we went to Venezuela and we said we're going to use the Bolivar, well, guess what? I mean, that's the Bolivar. It's still around. But you see what happened to the Bolivar a few times, man. I think, well, I don't know if we're going to get slammed that bad, but, things can change around pretty quick because a lot of times, it's like when the mood gets all one way, it kind of flips the other way. But I'm going to say the other thing, I think the next point where it's actually a fib point, but I wouldn't try to sell right there. I think the next real major fib point on the way up is going to be about 72.75 for silver. So my plan was to start selling in steps when it gets to 60. And some people will probably be saying you're high, it's never going to get to 60, but I think it is. Where I think I'm going to be nervous is the 75 going to reset, and then is it going to go from there to 150? That I wouldn't know. Because once it starts getting those kind of gains, I don't know. But we can see a major change this year if, I don't know if they, I know they've been talking about the attack on Iran since the freaking 1980. God, I know that. And you know, when they put up this oil bore, see, it was in 2007, but it wasn't really doing anything. And then later now, it's like China is basically, they're trading directly with China for oil. And actually China just, you know, they didn't want China to do that, but they're doing it anyway. It's like a slow process, a piece at a time. But depending on who's got political control, it would have definitely already happened. Oh, there's no doubt about it. I mean, if McCain was president or Cheney was president, the U.S. would have already attacked Iran. There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. I don't want to actually say Obama is really good because he's practicing domestic dictatorship or something over here. But, you know, it's like they would have done it. They would have done it. I think it has to do with possibly one of the most powerful people, or probably the most powerful advisor that Obama has, is Valerie Jarrett. She kind of controls who sees him, and she's got a lot of really powerful people in fear of her. I don't know. You know, they actually called her like the de facto president by some Democratic insiders. This wasn't like Republican dirt. It was just, I think it's true. She's been around with the Obamas since before, you know, they were big. She was an attorney. So, but you know, she was raised in Iran. So I'm sure there's an influence there to, you know, not have the attack. Then there's other things like Brzezinski. Brzezinski, who's like, well, you know, Brzezinski's totally against it. He's like big advisor to Obama too. So there's different things like that. But this whole situation, there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes where it just might happen. If they have an opportunity to convince the public, or if they piss off Iran enough, it'll happen, and then oil is going to go right through the roof. Gold is going to go right through the roof, and oil is going to, and silver is going to take off like crazy. That's why this whole situation could change very fast, and we don't know when it's going to happen because it's been talked about a long time. I heard the stories in 2010 when the Israelis got the bunker buster missiles or bombs and all this kind of stuff. It's going to happen right away. Oh, it's going to happen last spring. Oh, it's going to happen before the election. Obama's going to be dictator. People throw out rumors left and right, but it really could have happened a bunch of times. If there was a little bit difference in the political makeup, it would have happened. There's no doubt about it. And like I said, usually what happens to push an event a certain way, like, you know, JFK, I know that was a conspiracy there. It wasn't just Lee Harvey Oswald, but there's a lot of different elements that kind of coalesce to move something somewhere. It's almost like moving a Ouija board or something. You think one person's moving it, no, the other one, they're not sure, but it just has a life of its own. That's really what happens a lot of times with these things. And so I think that's pretty much going to happen with the same way with the Middle East. But I also want to state this, you know, don't go thinking, and a lot of people, you know, everybody knows all about the Western leaders and all the banksters and the conspiracies in the West and all this type of stuff, but, you know, people don't, you know, they're ignoring a lot of things. The Saudi leadership is corrupt as all hell. The Iranian leadership is corrupt as all hell. Egyptian leadership, the Russian leader, Putin, even when back in 1999 when they had those bombs going off and there was all that confusion, and he was like, that was all false flag, and that helped his power. False flag to put him in power in the beginning. All these world leaders are screwed up. So, you know, when you're being like totally anti-Western, don't go thinking the other guys are a bunch of saints, because they ain't. They're not. So, you know, the only thing that actually helps the West, period, is the Bill of Rights. I guess the USA is the only one that got it. So we're sticking with it. And we're keeping the teeth to make sure it stays that way too. So, but Lindsey Williams is not a total crackpot, I'll say that. He's got some stuff in there that's legit. I don't know if he's throwing out more drama to sell his DVDs or something. I don't know what the hell he's doing. I think he's actually kind of getting basically good, solid information in some ways. But, you know, even the good information, even if it's the actual honest opinion of this guy he's getting the information from, he's not God. You don't know every damn thing. It's an opinion. it's a learned opinion, but it's not everything. So, but I think it's pretty legit. You know, it's pretty legit. You could see anybody with half a brain knows that the U.S. dollar is losing its world reserve currency status piece by piece. And what does that leave? Other currencies? But then you think about it, other currencies are all being devalued. They're all fiat. They're all playing QE. Japan's doing QE now and everything, right? Well, it does leave a lot to say of a positive note for gold in the equation and metals and things that have tangible value. So, you know, the scary part is going to be, does it go to 75 and then that's it and then it crashes to 50? Does it go to 150 to 175 and then crash and reset below 100? And, you know, but what I can pretty much leave out of the equation is like a 500 to 1,000 or plus on silver and stay there. That I can pretty much leave out of the equation, you know. And the ones that pump that are like, so they're amazing that I don't understand why people follow that shit around like the Pied Piper, because that's bullshit. I know about the U.S. debt, but there's always other ways to manage the money. It doesn't mean the currency is going to oblivion. Because in effect, our currency is backed by something. It's backed by oil. They can also say, okay, it's backed by oil, agricultural land, natural gas, and livestock, and everything else. And they can all say all these assets now back up the dollar with the stroke of a pen and fix it. If there's an emergency, they will act. That's why I don't think the dollar's going to total oblivion. But I don't want to call them silver tards, but it's, well, I mean, they're not stupid. I mean, actually, some of these people are pumping metals are they're setting people up to keep it, buy in at it 100 or something. I'm sure a lot of people bought bitcoins at 200 too that are into that stuff. So where are they now? Down a half, right? So anyway, long term, silver is going back up, and maybe the 22 was a reset. Putin, my cat seemed to think so. I see him. He's like, hey man, but that makes sense. 22 was the height the last time. It goes down to that. Last time when they had 22 from the height, it went down to 8, which is the old height. Kind of makes sense in a couple other ways like that too. Fundamentals are still in place, and what can really drive up the metals, I know you've been hearing it for 50 years, war in Iran. And the guys that sell oil, that would just, they would love that. They wouldn't say that, but that would be very big profit for them. That would be very big profit for the guys that are selling oil, big time, because there would be that much less of it around, and they already got the machinery. They're already pumping out almost all the oil. We're almost like 100%. We're not 100%, but we got way more domestic oil now, and it's all in whatever domestic oil any oil that's being imported in the United States has come from Canada and some from Mexico. And it's, you know, the Middle East equation isn't even there that much. Actually, what that would do, you know what that would do? You know why the other reason they'd want to really hit Iran? It would mess up China. I'll add that here on the end. That's what China, this is actually a dangerous situation, big time. It would mess up China, because they don't have oil, which can actually set off a war between China and Japan over those islands. So this whole thing can turn into a mess. But if you're into commodities, you're going to do very well.